Take a good look at this tree. Go on, really look at it. For a tree this size, can you believe how loaded it is? The branches are bowing right down under the weight of all that fruit, top to bottom. And here's the part that'll stop you in your tracks. This tree barely fruited at all, until somebody did one strange little thing to it. They took a drill, made a small hole clean through one of the branches, and threaded a little loop of wire right through it. That's it. That's the whole famous trick, the one folks swear has woken up stubborn fruit trees in backyards for generations. Well, today I am going to tell you the honest truth about why that trick actually works. What's really going on inside that branch. Because there's a real hormone behind it with a real name. And then I'm going to show you 5 proven, research-backed ways to get that very same result, safely, on your own tree. And if you've only got the energy for one of them, don't you worry. I'll tell you exactly which one to pick. So pour yourself a warm cup of coffee, pull up a comfortable chair, and let's get into it. Section 2. Why a healthy tree won't fruit. Welcome back to EverGreen Seniors. It is so good to have you here with me again. Now, before we get to that wire, I want to lift something off your shoulders. If you've got a big, leafy, perfectly healthy tree that simply will not fruit, I need you to hear this. You did not fail. You do not have a black thumb. Your tree is not broken. It's just a little confused about its priorities. And once you understand why, the fix becomes almost obvious. Here is the heart of it, something researchers at Virginia Tech explain beautifully in their work on the physiology of fruit trees. A tree really only has 2 jobs it can pour its energy into. The first they call vegetative growth, and that's just getting taller, throwing out branches, and making leaves. The second is reproductive growth, and that's making flowers, then fruit, then seeds to carry on the family line. And here's the catch. A tree cannot go full speed at both of those at once. It has to choose. Think of a young man with every comfort in the world, not a single worry in sight. Why would he settle down and start a family? He wouldn't. He'd just keep enjoying the easy life. Well, that is your tree. When it's swimming in nitrogen, and I'll bet you $1 that fertilizer on the lawn nearby is the guilty party, it feels rich and comfortable, so it just keeps making leaves. Our whole job, with every method coming up, is to nudge that tree up off the couch and send it one clear message. The easy days are over, my friend. It's time to make fruit. Section 3. The wire trick. The honest truth and the bridge to what's proven. So, let's go right back to that little hole in the branch. You may also have heard the older version. Your grandfather driving a rusty nail into a tree that wouldn't fruit, and the next spring, it's covered in apples. A hole drilled through a branch, a nail hammered into the trunk. They're really the same idea. You give the tree a small, deliberate injury. And that little wire hoop, by the way, isn't doing the work at all. It's just there to keep the wire from falling out. The injury is the real signal. For 100 years, folks believed it was the iron in that rusty nail feeding the tree. And friend to friend, I'll be honest, that part is simply a myth. A tree can't pull iron out of a chunk of metal stuck in its side. But the trick itself does something very real, and it even has a name. When you wound a branch, the tree releases a stress hormone called ethylene. Scientists actually call it wound ethylene. And ethylene is a powerful little messenger. In some plants, it is the very thing that triggers them to burst into bloom. So when that branch gets injured, the tree gets a jolt that can push it to quit loafing and start setting flowers instead. It isn't magic at all. It's the tree's own chemistry reacting to stress. But here's where I have to be the honest friend those other videos won't be. That same ethylene is a double-edged sword. It can just as easily tell a tree to drop its leaves, shed its flowers, or age faster. So a wire or a nail is a roll of the dice. Sometimes you get a beautiful flush of fruit, and sometimes nothing at all, or worse. And either way, you've left an open wound that insects and disease can sneak into. So if you try it, do it on a branch, never the main trunk. And know it's a gamble. Now here's the good news. Orchard scientists long ago figured out how to send a tree that exact same time-to-make-fruit message, but in a way that's reliable, controlled, and genuinely proven. In fact, one of the 5 methods I'm about to show you is the grown-up, scientific version of that very wire trick. So let's do this the smart way. 5 proven methods coming right up, and we'll start with the gentlest one of all. Segment 4. Method 1. Branch bending. If you do only one thing, do this. The gentlest, safest, most beautiful method of all is the very first one. And if you do nothing else after this video, please do this one. It's called branch bending or limb spreading. Walk out to your tree and take a good look at how the branches are growing. Are a lot of them shooting straight up toward the sky, like soldiers standing at attention? If they are, well, there is your problem, right there in front of you. Here's the science, and honestly, it's lovely once you can see it. In the tip of every upright branch, the tree makes a hormone called auxin. Because of gravity, that auxin flows straight down the branch, and as it travels, it acts like a bossy foreman hollering at all the little buds below it. Stay asleep, no flowers, we're busy growing tall. Botanists call this apical dominance, and Virginia Tech's research shows that the more vertical a branch is, the stronger that bossy signal becomes. Now watch what happens when you simply change the angle. Take a soft piece of twine or an old strip of cloth and never thin wire that can bite into the bark. Tie it near the tip of one of those upright branches and hang a small weight on the other end. A little bottle of water or a sandwich bag filled with sand is just perfect. Let it gently pull that branch down until it's resting at about a 45 to 60 degree angle, roughly heading toward horizontal. The very moment that branch is no longer pointing straight up, gravity can no longer funnel the auxin downward the way it used to. The foreman loses his grip on the buds. And now a second hormone, called cytokinin, which rises up out of the roots, flows into those freed up buds and whispers the opposite message. Wake up now and make flowers. You haven't cut a single thing. You haven't hurt the tree one bit. You have simply spoken to it in its own language. Now here's the one mistake I really want you to avoid, because most videos won't tell you. Don't yank that branch down so far that it droops below horizontal toward the ground. If you overdo it, the tree panics in a different way and sends up a useless forest of vertical shoots, what we call water sprouts, all along the top of the bend. So a gentle arch, please, not a sad, drooping bow. Leave the weights on through late spring and into summer, and let that branch learn its new posture. That's it. You could walk out and do this the minute we're done here. Method 5. Method 2. Root pruning. A nudge from below. Method number 2 works from the complete opposite end of the tree, way down at the roots. It's called root pruning, and I love it for one simple reason. All you need is a sharp spade and just a little bit of nerve. Here's the idea. We talked about how a tree swimming in nitrogen and water just keeps right on making leaves. Well, the roots are what pull in all that water and all that nitrogen in the first place. So if we trim back some of those roots, we send the tree a gentle wake-up call. A little less luxury, a little more urgency. And the tree answers by setting flower buds for the next year. And this is not backyard folklore, by the way. Researchers like Dr. Dave Ferree at Ohio State University and Dr. Jim Shupp at Penn State spent years studying root pruning as a way to tame fruit trees that grow too vigorously. And Virginia Tech's Extension Service points out that a simple spade cut around a too-leafy tree in early spring is sometimes all it takes to push it into bloom the following year. Here's how to do it at home. In early spring, picture a circle on the ground out near the drip line that's directly underneath the outer tips of the branches. Take your spade and push it straight down, good and deep, making a row of cuts around just part of that circle. You're slicing through some of the roots, not digging anything up, and you don't need to go all the way around. Part of the circle is plenty for a backyard tree. Now, let me be honest with you, because that's what we do on this channel. Root pruning is wonderful for setting more flower buds, but the research is clear that it can also make your fruit run just a touch smaller in the same year that you do it. So go easy. Do it once on a vigorous tree that's all leaves and no fruit. Not every year, and never on a poor little struggling tree. We are giving it a nudge here, not a shove. Second 6. Method 3. Scoring and girdling. The proven version of that wire trick. Now, method number 3. Remember that famous wire trick from the start of our chat? Here is its grown-up, proven sibling. It's the most powerful method of the bunch, and the one I'd ask you to treat with the most respect. It's called scoring or girdling. Used right, it's a tool orchardists have leaned on for generations. Used wrong, it can hurt your tree. So lean in and listen closely. First, the golden rule, and I'm going to say it twice because it matters that much. You do this on a branch and never on the main trunk. Never on the trunk. If you girdle the main trunk, you can kill the entire tree. Now, the science, and this is where it beats that wire trick hands down. Just underneath the bark, there's a thin, living layer called the phloem. Think of it as a downward elevator, carrying the sugars the leaves make all the way down to the roots. When we remove a thin ring of that bark from a branch, we gently close that elevator for a little while. The sugars the leaves keep making can no longer travel down, so they pool up in the branch instead, right where we want them. And a branch loaded with sugar gets the message loud and clear: make flowers, make fruit. Studies from places like Michigan State University and the University of Massachusetts have shown this both improves flower bud formation and helps the tree set more fruit. So here's how to do it safely. Take a clean, sharp knife. On a healthy branch, make 2 shallow cuts all the way around it, about 1/4 of an inch apart, and then lift out that thin ring of bark between the 2 cuts. The key, and this is exactly where people go wrong, is to take only the bark. Do not dig down into the hard wood underneath. Bark only, just enough to interrupt that downward sugar elevator. And do this on just a few branches, never on all of them, so the rest of the tree can keep right on feeding those roots. Now, if even that makes you nervous, here's a gentler cousin of the same trick. Take a piece of soft wire and wrap it snugly around the outside of a branch. Not tight, not strangling, just snug. And let the branch slowly thicken against it over the season. As it swells, the wire puts steady, mild pressure on that same sugar layer, gently trapping the sugar with no cutting at all. Now, don't go confusing this with that drilled hole trick from the start of the video. That one pokes a wound to shock the tree, and it's a gutane. This one simply wraps around the outside to softly squeeze the sugar elevator. The same reliable idea as girdling, just gentler. Just remember to check on it now and then, and take it off before it ever digs in deep, because a forgotten wire can eventually strangle a branch right off. But here is the honest part most folks skip right over. Girdling is not a yearly habit. The research is very clear that doing this over and over wears a tree down and shortens its life. So save it for a truly stubborn tree. Do it just the once and let that branch heal, which it'll do all on its own in a few weeks. No paste, no wound paint, No product at all. Just leave it be and let the tree do its work. Section 7. Method 4. Summer pruning and letting in the light. Method number 4 might just be the most surprising of all, because it corrects a mistake I see good, well-meaning gardeners make all the time. Here it is. When a tree won't fruit, most people grab the saw in the dead of winter and prune it hard. And then they're shocked when the tree comes roaring back, even leafier than before. Here's why that happens. As Virginia Tech's pruning research explains, heavy pruning while a tree is dormant is like flooring the gas pedal on leafy growth. You cut it back hard, and the roots, which are still full-sized down below, shove all of that stored energy up into a burst of new leafy shoots. You wanted fruit, and instead, you grew yourself a salad. So what should you do instead? 2 things. First, go light in the winter, especially on a vigorous tree. And second, do a little gentle pruning in the summer instead. Summer pruning calms a tree down rather than revving it up. And just as importantly, it opens up the canopy. Now, why does the light matter so very much? Because fruit buds form where the sun actually reaches. A tree that's a dense, shady thicket on the inside will only ever fruit on its sunny outer shell. But when you thin out a few crowded, crossing branches in summer and let the sunlight pour right into the center of the tree, you are inviting flower buds to form where there were none before. And you'll get better color and sweeter flavor in the bargain. One honest little caution, and then we'll move along. Please don't get carried away with this. Those leaves are the tree's kitchen, the place where it cooks up the sugar that feeds your fruit. So snip out the crowding and the deep shade, but always leave plenty of healthy leaves behind to do their work. A little light, let in on purpose, goes a very long way. Section 8. Method 5. Feed the soil, not the leaves. And that brings us to method number 5, and this one, my friends, is the very heart and soul of this whole channel. Because here at EverGreen Seniors, we have a saying, don't feed the plant, feed the soil, and the soil will feed the plant. Every trick we've talked about nudges the tree toward fruit. But while it's working that hard, it needs the right support. And here's exactly where so many people undo their own good work. They march out and dump high nitrogen fertilizer around the tree, and the tree gladly takes that nitrogen, throws its flowers away, and goes right back to making leaves. So rule number 1, while you're coaxing out fruit, hold off on the nitrogen. What the tree truly wants right now is potassium, the nutrient behind plump, sweet, well-colored fruit, along with a living, healthy soil. And you can give it both for next to nothing right out of your own backyard. The real workhorse here is compost, with a good layer of mulch over the root zone. That's it. That is the actual magic. Compost slowly feeds the soil life that, in turn, feeds your tree. And the mulch keeps the moisture nice and even and the roots content. If you do only one thing for your soil this year, please make it compost. Now, if you happen to burn untreated firewood, you've got a wonderful free source of potassium sitting right there in your fireplace: wood ash. Extension services from New Hampshire all the way to Wisconsin will tell you that wood ash is rich in potassium and calcium and carries almost no nitrogen at all, which is precisely what we want at this moment. A light sprinkle, worked gently into the soil, can give your fruiting tree a real boost. But here's the honest catch, and please do hear me on this one. Wood ash also raises your soil's pH, just the same way lime does. So use a light hand, and ideally, test your soil first. It's a real treat for acidic soil, but too much of it will push your pH up too high and actually lock up the very nutrients you're trying to give. And keep it well away from your acid-loving plants, like blueberries and azaleas, entirely. And as for that miracle microbe potion you've seen folks stir up out of molasses, well, I'll be straight with you. Molasses can feed soil microbes a little, that much is true. But your tree simply cannot drink sugar. And all the real soil building comes from the compost, not from the syrup. So save the molasses for your gingerbread and put your trust in the compost. That, right there, is the evergreen way. Section 9. The honest truth. What to check first. Now, before you head out that door, let me be the honest friend who tells you the whole truth, because far too many videos out there simply won't. These 5 methods are proven, and they really do work to wake up a tree that's grown a little lazy. But they are not magic wands, so let's make sure the basics are all in place first, because otherwise, no trick on this earth is going to help. First, patience. A young tree just isn't old enough to fruit yet. Some need several good years in the ground before they'll ever bear, no matter what you do. Second, pollination. Many apples, pears, plums, and sweet cherries need a second, different variety nearby to trade pollen with, and they need bees to carry it. If you've got one lonely tree and no pollinator partner, well, that may be your whole answer. And third, sunshine. A tree buried in shade will never fruit well, and that's just the truth of it. So check those 3 things first. Then go ahead and pick a method. And I'd start with branch bending, the gentlest one of all, and give your tree a full season to answer you back. Because this was never really about forcing your tree or tricking it, it's about finally, truly understanding it. Section 10. Emotional close. You know, I think this might just be the real gift of gardening at our stage of life. When we were young, we thought the answer to absolutely everything was more. Dig harder, water more, work until our backs just ached. But a tree doesn't respond to force. A tree responds to understanding. And understanding happens to be the one thing we have more of now than we ever did. We've got patience. We've got a good, knowing eye. We've got time to sit quietly, really look at a tree, and listen to what it's telling us. A piece of twine, a single spade cut, a handful of ash from last night's fire, and the quiet, hard-won knowledge of how a tree truly works. That, my friend, is all it takes. And these aren't secret tricks that somebody hid away from you. They're just simple, honest truths that don't happen to fit on the side of a fertilizer bag. Because nobody can bottle up a piece of string or put a spade cut in a box and sell it back to you. So the knowing just quietly falls to folks like us. And now, it's yours. If a little of that light managed to find its way into your day, do me one small favor and give this video a thumbs up. It truly helps other gardeners find their way to us. And tell me down in the comments, which tree are you going to wake up this year? And what part of the country are you gardening from? I read every single one, and I'll do my best to tell you the perfect time to try these methods right where you live. And if you're not part of our little garden bench community yet, go on and hit subscribe, because there's plenty more where this came from. Until next time, my friend, you keep your hands in the dirt, keep your heart up in the sunshine, and always remember, it is never, ever too late to learn a brand new trick. And it is never too late for a tree to bear fruit. God bless and happy gardening.